What if, just by comforting a lost child, you were seen by someone who could change your entire life? This is the story of Claire James, a young single mom struggling to survive in New York City. One ordinary day at Grand Central Terminal, she comforts a crying little boy, completely unaware that he's the son of a millionaire CEO. What she didn't know was that this small act of kindness was being watched by someone who knew the pain of loss all too well. Stick around until the end, because this story will show you what happens when empathy meets destiny, and how second chances often come disguised as small miracles. If you believe in the power of small gestures and unexpected connections, this story is for you. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and come feel this emotion with us. The alarm rang at 4:30 a.m., but Claire was already awake. Sleep had become a luxury she could no longer afford. Her 10-month-old baby, Nora, lay sleeping on her chest, breathing softly. It was for her that Claire kept going, even with stinging eyes and a heart clenched with fear. Survival had become the new normal in recent months. Dreams? They were just background noise. Ever since Nora's father disappeared without a word, Claire had been forced to reinvent herself. She washed strangers' laundry, delivered food, cleaned empty offices late into the night just to make sure her daughter had diapers, formula, and a roof over her head. But sometimes, even with 3 jobs, the money barely covered the basics, and that hurt more than any sleepless night. She couldn't remember the last time she ate sitting down, or the last time she looked up at the sky without rushing. Everything in her life revolved around survival, and guilt was her constant companion. When money ran short, she blamed herself. When Nora cried of hunger before her next bottle, Claire would cry too, quietly behind the bathroom door, feeling like a fraud. Each day was a tightrope walk between the fear of failing as a mother and the need to hold her head high. And the worst part? No one noticed. People passed her on the street like she didn't exist. Some looked at her with pity, others with judgment. But none of them ever stopped to ask, "Are you okay?" In the freezing subway tunnels and stifling hallways of the building she cleaned, Claire held back tears. She longed for a hug, a shoulder, but there was no time for emotional breakdowns when you're a mom. It was just her and Nora. Period. The city was a beast that didn't forgive slip-ups. She'd once missed a shift because of a fever and got cut from the schedule. She had to lie and say the baby was with a neighbor, when in reality Nora was asleep in her stroller behind the front desk, nestled between bags of laundry. There was no break, no mercy, and yet, something inside her refused to die. A quiet strength, a stubborn hope, a tiny flame, barely flickering, but still alive. Claire knew she couldn't fall apart. Because if she did, who would care for Nora? And it was in that silent strength that her story was about to change. At the most unexpected time, in the most unlikely place. Claire James was the kind of woman who had learned to smile even when her heart was in pieces. At 27, her face still looked young, but her eyes held stories that years alone couldn't explain. Her brown hair was usually pulled into a rushed bun, her clothes were simple, and she had the kind of look people only get after seeing too much, and still choosing to believe in goodness. She'd learned early that the world wasn't kind to fragile girls. Lost her mom young, got raised by a bitter aunt whose favorite phrase was, "Figure it out." And she did. She worked from age 15, studied at night whenever she could, and once dreamed of becoming a teacher. But life had other plans. Plans that included abandonment, unpaid bills, and a lonely crib in the corner of a tiny bedroom. Nora's father was her most beautiful mistake. A whirlwind romance, full of promises that vanished the moment the pregnancy test turned positive. He disappeared, as if the baby wasn't even his. And there, in the chaos, Claire learned that strength wasn't about shouting. It was about carrying on. Hungry, scared, exhausted, with the world whispering, "Give up," she kept going. Because being a mom didn't allow room for collapse. What made her truly special wasn't just resilience, it was her tenderness. Claire had this way of seeing others, even when no one saw her. She had this instinct to care, even for strangers. She once gave her lunch to a homeless man even though she barely had enough for herself. She held a crying old woman on the subway, without knowing her name. She didn't do it for praise. She did it because she felt it, because she understood pain as if it were her own. There were days when her mind screamed, "You can't do this." But then came Nora's smile, that little tooth poking through, that clumsy babble that sounded like Mama. And just like that, everything clicked back into place, even if only for a moment. Claire knew love didn't pay the bills, but it's what kept her alive. Nora was her fuel. She worked freelance at a laundromat during the day and cleaned offices at night. Between shifts, she raced home to feed Nora, change diapers, and sing lullabies in a tone that hid her exhaustion. She was a broken woman, but whole for her daughter. And that made her incredibly strong. Deep down, Claire still believed things would get better. She didn't know how. She didn't know when. But she refused to believe life would always be this hard. It was that small, stubborn hope that kept her moving. And she had no idea. She was just about to be seen by someone who desperately needed a second chance, too. By the end of that month, Claire found herself at the self-checkout machine in a drugstore, counting coins and praying it would be enough to buy the special formula Nora needed for her intolerance. Her hands were trembling. People in line sighed loudly behind her, and Claire, cheeks burning with shame, pretended not to hear. It wasn't the first time, and it probably wouldn't be the last. That same day, she got an eviction notice. The rent was already 2 weeks overdue, and promises weren't cutting it anymore. The landlord didn't mince words, pay by Friday or move out, with her baby. Claire forced a smile and thanked him for the generous deadline, but inside it felt like the ground had opened beneath her. Where would she sleep with Nora? Who would take in a single mother with no savings? On top of everything, her body was falling apart. Carrying Nora in a sling while doing laundry and scrubbing corporate floors left her shoulders burning and knees buckling. More than once, she nearly passed out on the emergency stairwell between shifts. But sleeping too long meant missing the next train, and missing the train meant losing a job. The comments stung too. So young with a baby? She must have messed up. They didn't slap, but they cut just the same. Claire had learned not to answer, to pretend she didn't care. But behind her apartment door, the tears always came. Alone. Always alone. There were days Nora got sick, and Claire had to take her to work. She hid her daughter's fever, rolled up a towel to use as a pillow on top of her backpack, and prayed no one would notice. She just needed one more day, one more paycheck. Even when a neighbor offered help, Claire said no, not out of pride, but because she'd been promised things before, and those promises had shattered. She'd learned the hard way that relying on people was risky. In a world where promises broke like glass, she chose to count only on herself. One day, during a hidden bathroom break at work, Claire looked in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Sunken eyes, a worn-out expression. She was scared that this would be the only version of Mom her daughter would grow up seeing. So, softly, she made a promise. "I'll get better. For you." And somehow, with no plan, no certainty, she kept going. With stubborn faith and shaky steps. Because sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other is the bravest thing a person can do. And life, quiet as it was already setting the stage for the moment her strength would meet the one gaze that would finally see her. On a hot, stuffy Monday morning, Claire woke up with a rare kind of courage beating in her chest. She'd only slept 3 hours, but something inside whispered, "Today will be different." She put on her best outfit, a light blue button-up shirt she found in a donation box, and pulled her hair back more neatly than usual. She left Nora with the neighbor for 2 hours and set off, not knowing exactly what she was looking for. Maybe just hope. She went door to door, visiting small shops, asking about job openings, handing out resumes printed on reused paper. "I'm responsible. I have experience in customer service and cleaning. I'm willing to learn." She repeated the sentence like a mantra, wearing a tired but genuine smile. Most people barely listened. Some gave her pitying looks and said, "We're not hiring right now." At the last shop she visited, a tiny coffee place with the smell of burnt beans, the manager didn't even look up. "Got small kids? Then it won't work. They call out too much. I can't take that risk. Claire thanked her politely, stepped outside, and leaned against the wall, took a deep breath to stop the tears. But she couldn't. They came hot and heavy, falling silently. Her chest felt too tight to hold that much failure. On her way home, the subway stopped between stations. Claire sat with Nora asleep in her lap, doing everything she could not to spiral. The AC was broken. A man was yelling nearby, and she in silence kept whispering to herself, "Tomorrow, I'll try again." But part of her screamed back, "What if nothing changes?" That question hurt more than exhaustion. That night, with Nora finally asleep, Claire picked up her phone and started job hunting online. She found a posting for a kitchen assistant with on-site daycare. Her eyes lit up. It felt like a sliver of light at the end of a very dark tunnel. She filled out the form carefully, sent her resume, and spent the next few days checking her inbox obsessively. But the reply never came. She started to wonder if she was the problem. Maybe her story, her situation, her tired face made people turn away. Maybe everyone was right. Maybe she was just another poor girl trying to survive. And still, every single night, she whispered the same promise. "For you, Nora. I won't give up." One of those almost gave-up days, Claire decided to take Nora out. Not for fun, but to escape the crushing panic in her chest. She picked somewhere busy, somewhere loud enough to drown out her thoughts. Grand Central Terminal. She didn't even know why she ended up there. She just wanted to be around people, to feel like she still belonged to the world. What she didn't know was that this random detour would lead her straight into the moment that would change everything. Because sometimes, the most powerful miracles arrive when we've already stopped believing. The terminal was packed that late afternoon. People rushing, bags smacking into feet, voices swirling into chaotic music. Claire walked slowly, holding Nora gently against her, rocking her daughter's body so she wouldn't wake up. Her eyes scanned the crowd on autopilot. She was just moving, breathing, existing. Then she heard it. A cry, high-pitched, lonely, desperate. Claire turned her head and saw a little boy, maybe 6 years old, sitting on the ground near a pillar, hugging his knees. He was all alone, and people were just walking past him like he was invisible. Claire didn't think. It was instinct. Still holding her baby, she crouched beside him carefully. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked softly, like someone approaching a wounded animal. The boy didn't answer, but his eyes met hers, wide and wet with fear. Claire gave him a gentle smile and sat down beside him, right there on the grimy station floor. She pulled a small packet of crackers from her bag and offered it. "It's okay. You can eat. I'm here, all right?" He took the packet slowly, then started to speak. He was lost. His name was Owen. He said his dad had gone to the bathroom, and when he came back, Owen was gone. Claire stayed with him. She called terminal security, explained the situation, and asked if they could wait together until someone showed up. While they waited, she pulled a tissue from her purse and gently wiped the boy's face. He smiled shyly at Nora, who had just woken up and was looking at him with curious eyes. The two children locked eyes, pure, unguarded. And Claire, though exhausted to her core, felt something warm bloom in her chest. Just a few feet away, someone was watching. Andrew Collins, CEO of one of the state's largest companies, had returned from the restroom and panicked when he couldn't find his son. Then he saw him, sitting on the floor chatting with a stranger. He froze. But what he saw next, it softened him. The way she spoke to Owen, with kindness, without fear, as if she knew him, as if she cared. He walked over slowly. Claire stood up, Nora still in her arms, ready to explain. But Andrew stopped in front of her, eyes misty. You found him?" he asked. Claire nodded. He was scared. Just needed someone to stay with him until you got back. And for the first time in a very long time, Andrew Collins was speechless. It was a short moment, but it left a mark on both of them. A silent exchange. A deep gratitude. And though they walked away in different directions that day, fate had already decided this wouldn't be their last meeting. 3 days after that unexpected encounter, Claire got a call from her landlord. "Sorry, Claire. Time's up." There was no arguing. She hung up the phone and slumped to the floor, Nora playing beside her with a plastic spoon. The silence in the room felt heavier, like the house already knew they were leaving. And for the first time in months, Claire felt like she couldn't do it anymore. She cried into her knees, not from exhaustion this time, but from something deeper, desperation. She thought about calling her aunt, but she knew the judgment that would follow. She thought about going to a shelter, but worried what that might do to Nora. She felt like she had failed, and in that raw place, where pride no longer protects you, she whispered, "Someone, please, see me." That same night, across the city, Andrew sat in his penthouse reviewing reports. But his mind was stuck on a different image. That young woman sitting on the floor holding a baby while comforting his son. It wouldn't leave him. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something else. A stirring. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. He called one of his assistants. "Find out who she is." The request even surprised him. But there was something about the way she looked at Owen. Something he hadn't seen since his wife died. He'd shut himself off ever since. Buried himself in work. Avoided attachments. But that woman, she reminded him of gentleness. 2 days later they found her. Name, Claire James. Status, single mother, self-employed, no formal job, on the verge of eviction. Andrew read the report and sat in silence. Then he let out a long breath and said, "I want to meet her." No one understood. Not even him. But deep down, he knew he had to do something. Not just for her, but for himself too. Meanwhile, Claire was wrapping Nora in a blanket, ready to sleep at the laundromat where she sometimes worked. It was risky, improvised, but all she had left. She was at her limit, the kind of limit that doesn't warn you before it breaks. And just then, someone knocked on the door. A well-dressed man stood outside holding a discreet envelope, a formal invitation. At first glance, impersonal. But inside was something Claire never expected. A handwritten note. "You took care of what I love most without asking for anything in return. Now, let me take care of you." Signed, Andrew Collins. Claire hesitated for hours before accepting the invitation. She was afraid it might be a trap, afraid she wasn't good enough, afraid she'd fail. But Nora's curious, trusting gaze gave her the push she needed. The next day, with sweaty palms and a pounding heart, she made her way to the address. The Collins Foundation headquarters on the Upper West Side. She was welcomed politely, but noticed the curious stares. A young woman in simple clothes, holding a baby, walking into a luxury building. It turned heads. Still, she held her posture. She wasn't there for charity. She was invited. And for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe maybe she belonged there. Andrew showed up in person. He looked different. No suit, no corporate mask. Just him. They exchanged soft, almost shy smiles. "I arranged something for you," he said. It was an administrative position at the foundation, with flexible hours and daycare for Nora right in the same building. Claire's eyes widened. She wanted to cry. But instead she smiled. It was more than she had ever dared to ask for. The first few days were tough. Everything was new. Claire felt like she was walking through a world that wasn't built for her. But little by little, with effort and grace, she began to shine. She was organized, quick, deeply empathetic with the families the foundation served. She didn't ask for respect. She earned it. People noticed. She had light. She had strength. The daycare changed everything. Claire could finally work in peace, knowing Nora was safe, cared for, happy. During lunch breaks, she'd rush down just to kiss her forehead or watch her sleep for 5 minutes. Because for the first time, she had time to feel, to breathe. Andrew watched her from afar. No rush. He saw more than her work ethic. He saw her transformation. And something in him began to shift too. He started having lunch at the foundation instead of his usual upscale restaurants. He spent more time on site with social projects. He'd find himself scanning the room for her, even when he pretended not to. And when their eyes met, there was something there. A beginning. Claire, on her end, tried to resist the thought. She was scared of getting her hopes up. She'd loved too much before, and been broken just as hard. But with Andrew, it felt different. He didn't offer promises. He offered presence. And that, to her, was more than the world had ever offered. Each day was a tiny step, a quiet restart. She still carried scars, but she no longer walked alone. And that simple truth, that silent affection, it started to heal parts of her she didn't even know still hurt. One lazy, rainy afternoon at the foundation, Claire had just finished a report and was organizing old files in the conference room when she stumbled across a box of memories. Event photos, old brochures, scribbled notebooks. Curiosity won over fatigue. She pulled out a folder and flipped through it slowly, not really looking for anything, just letting the past touch her fingertips. And then she saw it. A faded photo, taken in a public schoolyard in Brooklyn. 2 kids in uniform holding posters for a reading project. The girl had a crooked smile and red ribbons in her hair. The boy, sharp eyes, dark hair, glasses way too big for his face. Claire froze. That girl was her. And that boy? It was Andrew. Her heart skipped. She turned the photo around. A handwritten caption read, 3rd grade, PS 118, Claire J. and Andrew C. She sat in silence for minutes. Memories returned in slow motion. He'd been her classmate for a year. They shared pencils, sat side by side. He used to defend her from boys who teased her for wearing hand-me-down clothes, and then he moved away. She never saw him again. That same day, Andrew walked past the room and saw her staring at the photo. He stopped at the door. Quiet. Their eyes met. And in that moment, they knew. The reunion hadn't happened just now. It had started months ago. But now, the pieces finally clicked into place. I remember you, he said, stepping closer. You always brought your lunch wrapped in napkins. And you used to give me half. Claire laughed, teary-eyed. And you copied off me during science tests. They both chuckled, but their eyes glistened. It wasn't just nostalgia. It felt like a missing piece of their lives had returned to say, you were always connected. Claire held the photo gently. Life's funny, isn't it? Of all the people I could have run into at that terminal. Andrew nodded. And of all the hands that could have held my son, it was yours. The discovery created a deeper bond, one that defied explanation. The past, once painful, was now a bridge. They weren't just 2 adults trying to heal. They were 2 kids the world had separated, and fate had brought back. And when destiny knocks a second time, sometimes, it's here to stay. It was the weekend, and New York had turned cold. Claire had been invited to a formal event at the foundation. Andrew had insisted, don't worry about the dress, just come as you are. So she did, holding Nora's hand, wearing a simple blue dress, hair down. But her heart, it was racing. Throughout the night, Claire felt the stares. Some curious, some judgmental. She still didn't quite feel like she belonged. Andrew came over with a smile, Owen beside him. The kids hugged like best friends. They'd been inseparable ever since they started daycare together. But Claire, she still felt like an outsider. When the event ended and the guests left, she and Andrew found themselves alone for a few moments. They sat on the terrace, the night sky above, wind playing with Claire's hair. Andrew broke the silence. I know something's holding you back, Claire. Something more than fear, more than your routine. She looked at him serious. I'm just a girl who couldn't hold her life together. I don't have a big last name, no stability. I'm just surviving. Andrew took a deep breath. And I'm a man who had everything and lost what mattered most. I'm surviving too. Claire's throat tightened. But what if I fall again? What if all of this is just another illusion? Then I'll fall with you and we'll get back up. Together. His words hit something she'd been guarding for years. Claire felt anger, not at him, but at life. At always having to be strong. At never being allowed to fall apart. I don't know how to love without fear, she whispered. I don't know how to trust. Andrew stepped closer. Neither do I. but we can learn. Together. And there in the quiet night, Claire cried. For the first time, not alone. She didn't hide. She let him see her pain. She let someone hold her. Not out of pity, but out of presence. And Andrew held her, as if holding her healed something in him too. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. No shouting. No grand declarations. But it was everything. Because they both realized something powerful. That true love doesn't come from perfection. It's born from the courage to stay, even when you're scared, even when you're broken, even when you're unsure. And in that moment, what began at a train station as an act of kindness became a choice. To stay, to build, to love. The months that followed were quiet, but intense. No grand gestures, no movie scenes. The change came in the details, in the way Andrew stopped by Claire's office just to ask how she was doing, in how she made 2 cups of coffee, even if she wasn't sure he'd show up. And he did. Every time. Nora took her first steps at daycare. Owen held her hand like a big brother, protective and proud. The kids seemed to share a secret pact, a bond built without words. And Claire was learning to smile again. Not out of survival, but presence. Because she was finally living, not just enduring. Andrew was changing too. He started playing the piano again, something he hadn't done since his wife passed. Slowly, he began taking the kids to the park, reading bedtime stories to Nora, even if he messed up all the princess names. He still carried shadows, but they no longer swallowed him whole. One night, Claire brought a simple cake to the foundation's dinner. It wasn't part of the menu. It was her mother's recipe. When Andrew tasted it, he closed his eyes and smiled. "This tastes like home," he said. Without thinking, Claire replied, "Maybe we're building one." The following week, she was promoted. Not out of pity, but because she earned it. Her social projects were gaining traction, drawing donations, connecting people. She became a reference. The girl who once walked in scared was now a woman admired, respected. They didn't label it, didn't rush anything, but they were together. On Sunday strolls, in quiet glances during meetings. In the mornings they shared coffee and silence. And deep down, they both knew. What they had didn't need to be explained. It just needed to be cared for. One night, Claire wrote in her journal, "I thought I was too broken to start over, but sometimes what we call an ending is just the beginning with a different name." And with that thought, she stepped, without realizing, into a new chapter. Not perfect, but hers. Whole and earned. Everything had changed. And somehow, nothing had changed that much. Claire was still Claire. Still taking the subway. Still messing up recipes. Still crying sometimes when she missed her mom. But now, she didn't cry alone. Now there were arms ready to hold her, and eyes that truly saw her. Andrew, who once thought he had lost everything, discovered that life could begin again with a single act of trust. He learned to love slowly, with listening, with presence, not like before, but like now, with honesty. Owen and Nora were inseparable. They laughed like siblings, played like they'd come from the same hidden place, a place of healing, where absence turned into connection. It was as if they knew. They were meant to be there, not by chance, but by something greater. One random afternoon, while walking through the park, Owen grabbed Claire's hand. Nora slept in Andrew's arms. No one said a word. But in that quiet moment, there was a shared truth. They were together. They were a family. Not the picture-perfect kind, but the kind that stays. The kind that chooses each other. The kind built in imperfection. Claire returned to the terminal where it had all begun. She sat on the same bench, watched the rush of people pass by, and for a second, she cried. Not from pain, but from gratitude. Because life hadn't always been kind, but in the end, it had been fair. And maybe that's all we can ask for in the chaos. To believe that what's meant for us will always find a way, not always on time, but always right on time. If emotional reunions, second chances, and timeless bonds move your heart, This channel is for you. Share your story in the comments. Have you ever helped someone? Or been helped when you needed it most? They were married quietly in a garden. Owen walked in with flowers. Nora tripped twice before reaching her mom. But it was her giggle that brought everyone to tears. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real. It was possible. The next day, Claire returned to the same bench at Grand Central Terminal. She sat with Nora on her lap and smiled. The same place where everything had started now marked a new ending. Or maybe a brand new beginning. Because life doesn't transform in 1 second. It transforms in small, constant decisions made with love, even when you think no one's watching. And don't forget, subscribe to the channel. Like the video, share it with someone who needs hope. We'll see you in the next story, where the unexpected always has something to teach.